Joined now by Pennsylvania Congresswoman and former impeachment manager Madeleine Dean and Washington Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Congresswoman, thank you both for being here. And Congresswoman Dean, I want to start with you and just get your kind of reflections 100 days later, particularly in light of the fact that you faced continuing threats. A Trump supporter having been charged with harassment after threatening phone calls to you in voicemails, including sexual remarks directed at you, at members of your family and grandchild. It feels like this kind of hasn't really 100% ended for you. Is that accurate to say?
It hasn't ended for me. It hasn't ended for Pramila. It hasn't ended for any of us. I think of our staffs, what they have to worry about. They have to receive these incoming threats. You're absolutely right. My own family, myself, have been threatened. I wound up with a protection group of Capitol Police officers. I could go on for hours about the professionalism and the humanity that they brought to their job protecting me for more than 2.5 months in light of these threats as I was impeachment manager and then thereafter. This is a protective agency, and they were underprepared, as the report showed. They were under-resourced, and the fault, I have to tell you from my own experience dealing with rank and file, sergeants, and upper-level members was not theirs. We owe them, Congress owes them the protection so that they can protect us. Pramila, I don't know what you think, but I can't believe it's been 100 days. We were talking recently, just today, talking about how close we were up in the gallery together. Pramila just having surgery and the surreal nature of it. The reason that I spoke about the nature of the sound, and Pramila, I don't know if you felt this also. The series of commands that we got, I felt like we're safe here. We're certainly safe in this chamber. This can't be that great a threat. But of course, it was an extraordinary threat. And the intelligence shows that Congress itself was the target. What does that tell you about the administration that knew that?
It is frightening to think about, and I have not gotten over it either. I wasn't even, there in proximity to it. And Congresswoman Jayapal, I mean, on top of the threat from banging on the doors, that God knows what they would have done had they been able to get through to any one of you. In addition to that, I wonder how you feel 100 days later about some of your colleagues who were not taking seriously the other threat, which was the threat of spreading COVID, and you having to be in close contact with them in these secure rooms with no masks and people laughing at those who are trying to distribute them and sort of adding to that threat. I just wonder your reflections on that, or even just on the day 100 days later.
Well, Madeleine's absolutely right. This isn't over for any of us. You might know that I started a text chain of all the people who were in the gallery. I call it the gallery group because, Joy, it's been really traumatic. And I will tell you that there are all kinds of triggers, just like with any trauma. When we see something happen, when we read about the Oath Keepers, when we see somebody on television, when we see the images again, and we've all had to go through, as well as our staffs, a lot of work to just process all of that and to live with the continuing fear because our colleagues are not taking this seriously. And yes, I contracted COVID because I was just to the left. Madeleine and I figured out I was just to the left of where she was, looking down on the floor. And so our group was sort of the last group to be let out, I think, now in looking at everything. And by the time we made it to the room, the secure location, it was packed. There were a couple hundred people. And that video you showed was our colleague Lisa Blunt Rochester trying desperately to get people to wear masks. We were trying to shelter and secure lockdown, but they were refusing to wear masks and laughing when Lisa was offering those masks to them. And the minute I walked in there, Joy, I knew that it was a super spreader event. And the minute I was done voting on the floor at 4 a.m., I went home and I told my husband, I'm going to get COVID, so I'm not leaving the house. I'm isolating. And in fact, 3 days later, I tested positive. 5 days later, he tested positive. And, and the Republicans are still not taking this seriously. And so I think the whole experience, Matt and I were talking earlier today, and it feels unreal still. Because it's hard to imagine that something like that could happen. I remember a text right at the beginning when we first heard that the crowds were breaching the Capitol. And my husband said, I think you should come back to the office. And I said, oh no, I'm here in the Capitol with the Speaker. This is the safest place I can be. And that gap of perception between how safe we felt or we thought we were and how safe we actually were is something that is continuing today. I think we all feel like without these additional security measures, without the additional 200 positions that the Capitol Police is down, without the retractable fences, you know, all the things that General Honore has proposed with his review, and without, I mean, we just had the first person, the oath keeper, plead guilty, but there's a lot of people out there who were involved in this, and worst of all our colleagues who are still perpetrating the big lie. And that's I think, the scariest thing.
Well, that is the question I wanted to ask both of you: is what is the level of trust? Because you have, you know, I mean, by the way, I'm still chilled by I remember talking with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley about her panic button not working and all of these things that they've got to remain traumatic. But then you have members on the Republican side who are doing things like forming a caucus for Anglo-Saxon values that sounds like it's repeating the 14 words, and still trying to push through anti-voter legislation, and still supporting the big lie and pretending they don't know who won the election. What's the level of trust within the Congress when you have members who it's not clear what side they're on when it comes to the siege? Congresswoman Dean.
You know, I really want to say publicly that the big lie and the continuation of it by our top elected officials on the other side makes everyone in this country unsafe. It's not just about electeds like Congresswoman Jayapal and me. It is about our staff. It is about the very Capitol itself. It is about, think of it, we not only lost Officer Sicknick, but then Billy Evans. Just this week, we had to have him lie in honor. We are all less safe. So I call upon our colleagues, and Pramila and I both serve on judiciary, where many of the big lie spreaders are, in addition to the super spreaders. And I call upon them to reflect, to say, I owe you the truth because I make all of you less safe as I promote the big lie. And I tell people that something was stolen from them. Nothing was stolen from them. This election was fair and square. We know it.
It is frightening, and I am frightened for you. And I don't know how I would be able to go about working with people who were still pushing that when that is what caused the violence. And as you said, people died as a result of it. People got sick because of it, and it's traumatized the country. But thank you so much for being here and sharing this evening with us. It's an important anniversary. We'll never forget it. Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, be well. And still ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. More on 100 days since the Capitol insurrection. Capitol police officer